People who wrote fanfiction between the ages of 12 and 16. What's the funniest thing you wrote completely seriously? Oh geez. I wrote a goddamn Danny Phantom fanfiction and put myself in the story where we fell in love. I attempted to write about a passionate kissing scene. Me, a 12-year-old girl who had never kissed a real boy before, tried to imagine what kissing a freaking ghost would be like. I think my words were something like his cold, dead lips felt like ice against mine. It's a good thing I like ice. I stopped writing the story and later deleted it after realizing just how cringy it was. But at the time, I thought it was a masterpiece. The cold never bothered me anyway. You were 12. I wrote myself into Lord of the Rings as not even a Mary Sue but just as me. I married Legolas. The best part is definitely that this was in the 90s, so it was even before the movies were made. That's, like, epic level nerdity. I hope one day to be as cool as you. I've been trying to repress this memory for almost a decade. I started a self-insert fanfic where the character based on myself created a portal to the anime world so I could insert myself into the lives of my favorite characters. Thankfully I never finished it. Least you didn't go through with it like that writer who self-inserted himself into the official Powerpuff Girls show. I was on a really long bus ride once and I wrote up a Shrek fanfiction in like 4 hours. Nothing Shreksual. What I remember was Shrek and Donkey being combined into one larger being, which I had other characters refer to as Shronky. Shronky then set out to stop a necromancer from raising a dead army to life. It's thankfully lost to time by now, but somewhere around the early 2000s I was deep into zombie related fanfic and I was working on a story about a zombie outbreak at Disney World. The first action set piece, before any zombies ever showed up, was a street fight between the response team and a group of costumed Disney mascots. The line "Hey ho, mother" was used, followed by one of the 7 dwarfs getting curb stomped. 0-0. I never actually got to the zombies. I burned out all my energy trying to make the mascot street fight work. A shame this never fully took form. I'd read that. I tried to submit a fanfic on a Pokemon website but they would only accept a fic with a minimum word count of about 3,000 words. My fic was just supposed to be about Ash going to the supermarket with Mr. Mime. I had no idea how else to lengthen the fic so I just made Ash bump into a wall, get a head injury and speak gibberish for 2,500 words. The fic was rejected. My fic was just supposed to be about Ash going to the supermarket with Mr. Mime. For some reason I find this to be the weird part. During my Superholic phase, I know, I regret it, too, I wrote a high school Sherlock fanfic on Fanfiction.net, where else, that ended up with thousands of views and a few hundred followers. This was in 2012. In 2014, my freshman year of college, I was visiting my sister at her school and while talking about cringy fanfiction memories, her friend mentioned having read a well-known Sherlock high school lore. She told us the title. It was the fanfiction I wrote in 2012. Does presidential fanfiction count? I wrote an Abraham Lincoln erotica about Honest Abe having a threesome in the Oval Office. I left it up on my computer and my mom found it. She was confused. Naruto fanfiction. Back when we thought Deidara was a girl, so 2005ish. She was freaking Itachi and he enters her anally and then Deidara had screamed, "Oh my god, I'm getting butt fucked." This sounds exactly like the bull's 10-year-old Naruto obsessed me would read. Good job. I didn't write any, but I remember freshman year of college there was this girl obsessed with fanfic. So one day in the car I read her fanfic from Avatar: The Last Airbender as a joke. Katara bended the CM out of her hair and into her mouth. Avatar Aang proceeded to enter Katara's gaping holes and used water bending to make her wet and milk bending to make her tea huge. She then explained to me, "This is smut fanfic and I like romance." She then read to me stuff about Luffy from One Piece choking and engaging in BDSM with other makes. Interesting. Everything changed when the Milk Nation attacked. A short, like maybe 200 word, fanfic for the Studio Ghibli movie Castle in the Sky, in which they arrive at the castle and find out it is actually a giant Walmart. At the time I sincerely considered it the height of humor. Can't lie, I chuckled at this. It'd make a good Robot Chicken sketch. I've kind of blocked it out, but I think I wrote Pokemon Digimon crossover fic where they hack the Digiverse and gain supernatural powers, but then some of them encounter an even greater hacker and get possessed and mind controlled by him. Those days of just before puberty. That actually sounds really cool. I once wrote a Harry Potter fanfic where the Americans were invited to Hogwarts and did a blood ritual thing. I had to scroll so long to find this. I only wrote Harry Potter fanfiction. But, more likely than all of the options, it was because Leia was sitting on the edge of the bed, propped up on her elbows, legs spread and honey pot there for the taking. Han was goddamn Pooh Bear in that moment, and he wanted to do a lot more than taste her. This sounds like something I would have eagerly read with a straight face when I was a teenager. Maybe I did read it. When I was 12 I wrote a story in which a guy had to abandon his spaceship. His last words to the onboard computer were "computer, delete browser history and initiate pilot ejection." At the time there was no such thing as a web browser. The browser was a device in my story whereby people browsed star maps for navigation. Deleting the history was a safeguard against being tracked by an organization that might recover the indestructible component, basically the navigation computer of his ship. But reading it in today's terms, it's quite funny. Homeboy wasn't just looking at maps on that thing. Elder's Game. It was like Ender's Game but for the elderly. A bunch of middle-aged people played video games that trained them to be industrialists because humanity needed money to fight aliens. I dunno. This seems like it could be done justice. I still have all of my old fanfic available online. My friend still gives me crap over this line. If he could, he would go back and apologize for him not to be kidnapped. I wrote so many god awful things, and some okay ones too. I mostly wrote during my edgy phase, so the worst was a Harry Potter Percy Jackson Soul Eater crossover where an emo self-insert who wore all black and dual-wielded katanas beat all the major characters from all 3 series in a ham-fisted fight, and the fight scenes were interspersed with Linkin Park lyrics. I may have scrubbed all traces of my works from the internet, but I can never erase the shame of knowing my parents found them. As a preteen I would have freaking loved that. Later that day, SpiderMan ran up to Tony, panicking. "What do you want?" "Spider Boy," Tony asked. I accidentally webbed all over Pepper," SpiderMan said. "Spider Boy, no," Tony shouted. "You have to be gentle with her. She's pre." He then cut himself off. "She's what?" SpiderMan asked, climbing the wall. "Nothing, Spider Boy," said Tony. "Go clean her up." "Nah, climbing is more fun," said SpiderMan. "Well, then, I'm going to check on her," said Tony. "She's probably crying now. Or, she cries too much," SpiderMan said. "Is something wrong with her?" No, nothing is wrong," said Tony. "Mind your own business, and get off of my ceiling." Tony went to find Pepper, and found her lying on the floor with white, sticky stuff all over her dress. "Pepper, are you okay?" he asked. Pepper decided not to answer. "Answer, Emmy!" Pepper, Tony yelled. After she still didn't answer, Tony stomped out of the room. Well, it made me laugh a whole bunch, if that was what you were going for. This was my idea of a good build up towards an epic fight scene, which luckily was never written. "Darn it, we went all this way for nothing," said Doctor Strange. "Now we have to make our way out and back to your, what do you call it? Left double quotation mark. A TARDIS," said the Doctor. "Would you like another mushroom?" "Yes," said Doctor Strange, outstretching a hand. "They make me feel so happy inside." "Me too," shouted the Doctor, opening the bag and tipping it a couple of feet above Doctor Strange's hand. For some reason, though, Doctor Strange did not try to catch them until a full second after they were dropped. The mushrooms fell on the floor. The two stared at the fallen mushrooms for a little bit, and then the fight broke out. "You dropped my mushrooms," cried Doctor Strange. "You were too slow to catch them," said the Doctor. They were interrupted by Thor bursting in through the ceiling and showering them with debris. "Hello, doctors. I have returned," Thor said. Doctor Strange groaned. "I think you hurt him," the Doctor said. "Oops," Thor said, looking at Doctor Strange. "Would you like me to escort you to a hospital, best buddy?" "No, I hate hospitals," said Doctor Strange. A police siren was heard. "Uh-oh, The police are coming, Doctor Strange said, and it's all your fault. He tried to punch Thor, but Thor jumped out of the way. My fault, Thor asked. I just arrived. Besides, if you punch me, you go to heck. Doctor Strange shut his mouth. Hey, guys, let's slowly walk away like we're in an action movie, said the doctor. A police officer walked into the building and pulled out a walkie-talkie. Hello? I need backup. There is a huge guy in here. We can't be seen by that officer, said the doctor. I have an idea. We will fly out, said Thor. As you can see, I have a cape. Well, I have a TARDIS to get to, said the doctor. I can't leave her here. Fine. Steven and I will fly out on our own, said Thor. Do not call me Steven ever again, said Doctor Strange. Suddenly, the TARDIS materialized near them. TARDIS, why did you move by yourself? The doctor asked. The TARDIS doors swung open and an ugly old lady walked out. Cello, Wheatie, she said, and stumbled towards them. River Song, are you drunk? The doctor asked. I don't know what I love more. The line "do not call me Steven ever again," said Doctor Strange, or the fact that you hated River Song enough to call her an ugly old lady. Mine is rather cringy than funny though. I once wrote this weird but gay fanfic about a dude getting a dare from his friends in which he had to prove that he's not gay by suppressing a boner. 15-year-old me was a strange kid. I'm an adult who still writes fanfiction. I switched accounts at one point so some of my cringiest works aren't the first thing you see on my page. I wrote 97 chapters of a Danny Phantom work. It started out okay enough for preteen standards, but near the end it went off the rails. I worked in this entire apocalyptic alternate past that made no sense at all. Danny's sister from that universe then murdered his sister from the normal universe and Danny spent the rest of the story in mega grief mode. His sister then actually comes back from the dead, but not really because Danny can't see her. I tried to do a sequel where he turns evil from the grief, but I never finished it. Thank God. I tried to write a story in French. I didn't get far, because I don't speak French. I also tried to be all progressive at one point and write only with they them pronouns. It was completely awful. Everybody had the same pronoun, so I either had to use their specific name every time or nobody would know what the frick was going on. Instead of helping spread awareness, a lot of readers just thought it was the dumbest thing. I'm sure when I look back at what I'm doing years from now, I'll cringe at what I'm writing. But I kind of like that, because it means I've improved. When I was about 15 I wrote a real person fic where two of the male band members were pregnant with the children of their other male band members. Around the middle of a story, myself insert packed the two pregnant men in the car and we ended up in a police car chase because myself insert character didn't have a license and wasn't a very good driver to begin with. But even though I established that myself insert was a crappy driver, I was able to pull a fast and furious maneuver and got the cop car to drive over the side of a cliff. And we were driving because we were trying to get in and out or some crap. I still laugh every time because of the sheer stupidity of it. Self-insert was a crappy driver, I was able to pull a fast and furious maneuver and got the cop car to drive over the side of a cliff. Sounds like most action movies these days. Oh, I've never driven a car proceeds to drift like a freaking pro. I wrote a very short rapple fic. I mean it wasn't exactly meant to be serious, and it was pretty dumb, but I wrote a fanfic shipping a human and an apple. I still have it, lol. Literally any of the stuff I wrote for Meridian 59. I doubt many know what it is, but M59 was one of the first, if not the first, MMORPGs, so early that they actually predate the term. It used to be called a visual graphical MUD, multi-user dungeon dimension. This was back in 1997 or 98. Playing a game of pixelated sprites superimposed on a 3D environment. I wrote fanfiction that involved my fellow guildmates, a rival guild, the game's NPCs, and a plot to overthrow the Princess Katerina to install the communist government under Paddock, the bartender owner of Families, a bar in Tencent, usually the most popular spot on the server. It had everything. Me Mary suing the place up, making fun of in-game rivals, a love story involving someone who, now, I'm 99% sure was catfishing me, and all the poorly understood political theory and angst-filled teen could wring out of the Communist Manifesto and apply to a world with sentient talking birdmen. Oh, and this wasn't a short story written for a goof. I wrote a goddamn trilogy. People, looking back it was like I was the pseudo-communist version of Tolkien with a serious head injury. Pseudo-communist version of Tolkien with a serious head injury. You sound like someone who's a lot of fun at parties. One fic I wrote had the line, "He was surprisingly fast about it," which wasn't surprising. Me and my friend had found my old flash drive and were laughing over my writing for hours. Thomas Jefferson along with the other founding fathers are revived in 2028. Jefferson shows up to a Hamilton play and ends up ranting on stage and getting tackled. Alexander Hamilton then posted a tweet mocking that incident. Thomas Jefferson then challenged Hamilton to a modern day duel, also known as boxing. Hamilton ultimately ends up winning. As a Virginian I love this. However, TJ wouldn't get up on stage like that. He would write an editorial for a newspaper or a website. He'd probably have a blog. He also doesn't seem like the dueling type. I wrote a very erotic fanfiction showcasing a gay love affair between Anthony and Ian from Smosh. It was a long series too, almost 5 chapters. This is peak 2010. I wrote a fanfic putting Sheogorath from the Elder Scrolls into the Mass Effect universe. His introduction involved riding across a desert world to meet Talizora, who I romanced in the game. It was some of the worst garbage I've ever written. Lost the files since. Don't know if I want to read it again for some nostalgic hilarity or if I'd rather keep that one hidden from myself. A really long, really fricked up 21 pilots gay fanfic that involved Tyler and Josh dating. A creepy rapist ex that kidnapped Josh into a weird DDLG relationship. 2 many suicide attempts, and a coke addiction. It got 1 million reads on Wattpad. Even your username is essentially half of a large number of fanfics lol. Dunno if it counts as fanfiction, but I once did a creative writing assignment where I rappelled into Johnny Depp's house for an autograph. He was so impressed with my dedication that we ended up hanging out and becoming friends. I was a lonely kid. I mean, I'm a lonely adult too, but my fanfic is way better written now. That's weirdly cute. Cringy as they are. I always kinda smiled at the RPF fics written by obviously young people about the celebs they like becoming their friends or legal guardians or finding out they're related. It just seems so dang wholesome in an internet full of sexual depravity, even though I did always assume they were pretty lonely, which was sad. I took everything I wrote seriously then. It was mostly erotica and the whole lot is laughably bad when I look back at it. I was actually 11, but I wrote fanfiction based on Animorphs and Pokemon, my 2 favorite series at the time. I called it Pokemorphs, which was a name I actually stole from another website. Whoops. It was me, my sister, Ash, Misty, Brock, Axe, a girl I had a crush on at the time, and my sister's best friend all fighting to stop the Yeerk invasion. I made Ash get trapped in Pidgeymorph, like Tobias. I made Ash get trapped in Pidgeymorph, like Tobias. Huh. I wrote a Roseanne fanfic after her national anthem debacle where Dan divorced her and married Brett Butler of Grace Under Fire. Do us all a favor, get some Ambien and write a sequel. The story has since been removed, but I can paraphrase it here. Deidre and Itachi were sitting on the couch in their lounge area, reading from a magazine, when Payne walked in, steamed. "Hey suckers." They both looked up, confused. Suddenly, they were pelted with lemons, screaming, "Here's your fricking lemon." Written and produced by 11-year-old me. Actually funny. I wrote a Fire Emblem fanfiction when I was 12 and I wrote a thing at the end of one of the chapters where it said something like "if you like, follow" and other crap like that. But I didn't like it when people just said that it was crap for no reason, or as I and many others called it, flaming. So I said if you flame, you'll get roasted. I was 12 not even that long ago, but that hurts to read, even though that's the best gem. That's not the only. For those who have never played Fire Emblem, specifically Awakening, one of the characters, Frederick, has a suit of armor he wears at all time. At one point in this fanfic a bad guy pierced through his armor, shattering it. Under the armor was a suit and tie. Me and some friends read it in a voice call years after I finished and we compared it to the SpongeBob episode where Patrick rips off his pants revealing a suit. I was 12 not even that long ago, but it hurts to read. I'm willing to link it in DMs. The funny thing is that Freddy actually does wear a suit and tie under his armor. Iceland lay on top of the broken old fridge desperately and screamed at Burwald that if he threw out the fridge he was going with it. To be young and a Hitalia fan. I wrote a lot when I was younger. I remember writing a fic about a group of teen guys having a sleepover. I'm sure that's far from the worst example I would have had, but I pretty much scrubbed most of my work from the internet a few years later. I wrote a fanfiction revolving around the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise that had Shia Dormer and Jack having a daughter some 20 years before we meet her in the storyline. And because Shia Dormer was actually Calypso, this meant that the daughter had some badass crazy magic powers. I gave her some pretty crazy abilities, but the best one was probably her ability to resurrect those who had died. TBH, this sounds awesome. As a Beatlemaniac and obsessive classic rock fan in general, I came across the concept of /fanfic for the first time when I was maybe 13. I thought it was really stupid and decided I would make up my own parody fanfiction making fun of Beatles/. I teamed up with my younger brother and we wrote something along the lines of the Beatles having one of their concerts all fricked up because of something /related. Paul never emerged onto the stage, which led the fans to believe that the Beatles had killed Paul, thus starting the Paul is dead rumors. I don't remember anything else. That actually sounds legendary and I really want to read this now. I dabbled a bit, but it was all serious. I was hiding my sexuality a lot during that time, so it was mostly a place for me to live out my lesbian fantasies with women I crushed on. Oh baby, from this year, someone requested a creepy fic about a couple with about a 20-year age difference, so I wrote a Lolita-esque story that has become the fandom's cursed story. Every fandom has one, and I'm, proud to be the author of this once. When I was 14, I wrote a romance story that was a cross between Pokemon and FMA. It's not terribly obvious that it's about either of them, but it dealt with such heavy topics as suicide and child abuse. I don't remember much about it other than that it was poorly written, but I remember trying to make sense of the world around me by putting it into fiction, a habit I still have today. When I was about 14, I wrote an erotic Pokemon fanfiction between a muck and a female trainer. I used to write a lot of erotic Pokemon fanfiction and I kinda hate myself for it. No. God. No God. No. God. No. God. No. God. No. God. I don't know if anyone remembers Kim Possible, but that was my first fandom. I wrote self-insert OC fanfic where I went to their high school, went on missions with them, and got the male-led Ron to fall in love with me. It was never posted and thankfully died with my parents' old PC. I think I'm the oldest person here, cause I wrote a stonking good crossover of the Brady Bunch and the Partridge Family and thought it was brilliant. Much too young to even think about sex, so everyone was just good friends. Luckily this was way before the internet, so it will never come back to haunt me. This is hilarious and wholesome. So I was much younger than 12 when I wrote this. I must have been like 9 or something, but I was way into the Hatchet series, and also, being a child, I really love cyborgs. So I started by writing about Brian from the Hatchet series going on another camping trip. As those novels often start, I spent many paragraphs detailing the things Brian took camping with him. Then the cyborg from space crashed near Brian's campsite. His name was Magnus Rex. I then described Magnus Rex's stuff, including the many hats that he had with him. So Brian meets my space cyborg OC and asks him what's up, and Magnus Rex says that he has to warn everybody that the Spanish Armada was coming for Earth. Because at that time in my life I was very upset about Spanish colonialism and their killings of native populations, the Aztecs in particular. So the Spanish Armada comes into orbit around Earth, and then Magnus Rex's arm turns into an energy weapon musket, and he then blows up the entire Spanish Armada with one shot. Which begs the question of why he bothered coming to Earth anyway, and I really don't have an answer for that one. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.